Well, here we are.
Wow! Reunion.
Reunion.
Let me cheers to that.
Hey.
Hey. Is this your first follow-up?
This is true. Hey guys, it's Coffee with BAO, and it's my first follow-up.
And you picked the most mid person to follow up. What?
With the most, adaptable to change person to follow up with. So, Tony Nguyen was in, I guess, episode 20-something of Coffee with BAO. And the final episode where I, felt like the show wasn't serving my purposes anymore. And so I left it for over a year.
Oh, I knew that. I didn't know that interview went so badly. God.
No, it wasn't. It was a great one. But changing the format really helps. But now I get to follow up with you and we get to have a whole other conversation.
I think last time was still during the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we are not even in the same room. And now we've hung out too many times. So many times. Not too many. Never enough.
So tell us who you are, Tony.
I'm Tony. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a singer, songwriter, producer, session musician, theater musician. My current passions are guitar, I would say, playing guitar and wherever places will have me, and being a producer and helping other artists realize their vision. And yeah, I think the biggest update is the artist part was a lot bigger last time we chatted, but now it's taken more of a backseat because, different things are calling me at the moment.
Yeah. You're on tour with a cool theater show right now.
Yeah,
Huh?
I'm on tour with the Cher show right now.
The Cher show. Do you get to see her daily?
No. I got to see 3 people play her daily, which is super fun.
I see.
Yeah.
The thing that I admire you a lot for, Tony, is that you move along with your changes very fluidly and without fear and hesitation, like many people have, many people struggle with. And I wanted to talk about that because these episodes are short now, so I'm not going to beat around the bush,
Love that.
So since the last episode of Coffee with BAO that you were on, you've officially announced that you're non-binary. You've officially took a little break from being like a full-time music artist to go tour. I guess before that you jumped into a big change of quitting your day job as a software engineer to be a musician.
Yeah, that was the big topic last time.
Yeah, what do you think about that assessment of your personality, that you trust yourself enough to go with your changes?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm fearless, even though it seems that way on the outside in social media. I think the biggest change has been, well, I guess, okay, I'll start with why the jump happened in the first place and then how it's extended, which is I thought a lot about the history of resilience in my family. So we both come from Vietnamese refugee families, and the way I envision my legacy and the way I envision carrying on my parents' legacy is their sacrifice means that I get to pick what I want to do. I get to self-actualize.
Wow.
So that's always been the driving force behind all my decisions, which is, at first, when I was growing up, I interpreted my parents' sacrifice as, oh, I should do the things they want to do, they think would make, they think are the right things to do, like get a good job, start a family, blah, 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 blah. But as I got older and I became more disassociated with that, I just found I didn't resonate with that at all for many reasons, which we don't have to get into. I think any person who has immigrant parents knows that they have very strict expectations of what you're supposed to be, and if you don't fall into that, it can cause a lot of discord. But when I thought more about it, I realized actually what my parents, at the core of what they want for me, is for me to be happy. So the reasons behind all my decisions is that, very simply, I want to live a life that actually aligns with who I am, because that's the privilege my parents don't get. I get to self-actualize. I get to be outside the gender binary, because my parents had to have strict gender roles to survive. or I get to be a musician because my parents never had the opportunity to follow a dream that was a little bit more open-ended. So partially it's my parents, and then the other thing is just like, growing up and realizing success is defined by you only. No one else thinks about...
What?
I mean, I know it's like such a thing people say, but truly the entirety of our programming growing up is like a very strict path. But once I learned, like, actually the only one who's gonna care about it, I mean, to get just like the morbid way I think about it as someone who has like, has had depressive episodes in the past and have gone past it, is at the end of the day, like, the life I live is mine and mine own, like, to end or to live. So if I'm gonna live it, I should live it in the way that makes me feel the most satisfied.
Cheers to that. That's a
Yeah.
beautiful statement.
Yeah.
So you mentioned about following who you are as a person and trusting that.
Yeah.
But the trick there is to figure out what that is.
Exactly.
How's your approach to that?
So I guess going back to the fear thing, like, I love how you characterize me as fearless, because actually I feel constant anxiety about what I'm doing and how I'm spending my time. And that was like actually a big part of this past year. Before I went on tour, I was like in the same cycle of burnout, of like, oh, I'm an artist, but I'm a musician, but I'm a teacher, but I'm a producer. I was like pulled in so many different directions. And yeah, it was depressing, because like it always felt like I was never doing enough, even though I was doing literally everything. So to break out of that and to get into this current decision of like, and like many of the decisions in my life, it's a buildup of just like, I don't want to say bad habits, but just like your life gets to a point where you're doing the same thing and you're like stagnation, and you're like, what the fuck am I doing? Why am I not happy? What fear is keeping me back? That was a big thing I worked out with my therapist this year. It's like, I'm so afraid of being broke, not living up to my potential. The big thing was like, when I quit my job to do music, I was like, I have to make it worth it. But that's like already a judgment on yourself. Like, what is worth it?
What does worth it mean? Yeah.
Before, when I was a young person, I'm still young, but like early 20s, worth it was like, oh, I need accolades, I need fame, I need listenership, I need people to know who I am so I can like prove to my parents that this was all worth it. But then as I get older, I'm like, no, actually the only people who matter the most are like the people who are closest to you and love you, and you love them. So those are the people with my current career that I want to take care of, the people who are close to me. And that's a more broad category than people might think. Yes, there's like my partner and my family and my friends, but then there's also the people in my life who, speaking as like a non-binary trans person, like, yeah, those are the people who are also close to me. Like, how can my music help them see themselves? And if I'm doing other things when I'm not being an artist, like in this show, I'm playing guitar in a share show, which on its face is super fun, it's true, but also it brings joy to people. It brings joy to older folks who are, out in the middle of nowhere, and now they're seeing like queer people in a positive way. So again, it comes back around. Like the people who like are in your inner circle continues to grow as you get a little bit bigger and further in your career, right? So that's who I'm trying to focus on. Not like, I think when I was younger, it was like, oh, how do I get everyone to like me? But no, it's not about that. It's about how do you like yourself first and love yourself first, and then how do you find the people who will also love you? Yeah.
Ooh, that's interesting. How do you find and love yourself first?
Yeah, and then, I mean, now just like as a tangent, like for artists, like the biggest thing I always tell the artists I'm working with is when you're talking about your songs and like you're showing your songs and you're making music, people either have to love you or hate you. They can't be in the middle. That was the biggest mistake in my early career. If you try to aim for the middle, no one's gonna care about you at all. But if you are yourself, like, yes, like I get hate comments about the way I dress and like how I act, but on the flip side, I get people who are like, I have never seen anyone like myself like out in the world being happy and joyful. So you can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
But when people see happiness and they themselves are super sad and miserable, they're probably gonna tear you down. And that's okay. You just say fuck them.
I think that there's a little nugget in there that I think a lot of people overlook, which is a lot of the disapproval of you
Yeah.
or of anybody else is kind of an embedded fear within yourself. And many judgments are like that, right?
Yeah.
And I think that the work that you've been doing, that I've been doing, is just not judging externally, because we're just doing such weird stuff ourselves. We're like, how can we judge other people? And there's a sense of peace in that, right? Where you're just like, oh, okay, you just haven't been exposed. We'll let you get exposed to other types of people, and then you'll come around. The feeling of inner peace and comfort in not judging is a sublime feeling that I want to share with so many people.
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing I've learned on my non-binary journey is how different people occupy space. So it's like, even if I am judgmental of someone, I think before, when I was a man, I was just never taught to like look outside of my own perspective.
That's it.
But then now that I've like gone through, like I've thought about gender a lot more, and like, for example, how women occupy space,
Yeah.
like they're constantly assessing what's going on, because for a lot of reasons,
Yeah.
primarily safety, right?
Yeah.
Like being aware of the environment, and like also in other ways, like women are socialized, you know, they're socialized and like in many ways coerced into being like the nurturing quote unquote person, like stereotypes, right? Gender stereotypes, right? But because of that, they are aware of more other people's needs.
Yeah.
It's more likely that a woman's going to be more aware of someone's needs versus a man. A man
Yeah.
usually gets to just be. So when I transitioned to being non-binary and I thought about gender, these are things I had to like think about. And I was already thinking about this as a man, but like, especially when you're non-binary and you're like, you enter a space and you're like, oh, I'm in this room. How are people perceiving me? Am I in danger or not? Just being real about it. Like
Yeah.
that, on one hand, is a negative thing. Like, yes, I'm on edge. But on the positive, it also means I'm also more aware of other people around me and other people's feelings.
Cool.
So because of that, it also leads to like an intellectual thing. And let's judge, like, I try to understand where people are coming from.
Are there exercises that people can do to become more understanding of other people's perspectives?
I mean, the first thing to do is to understand your own, right? So I journal, right? You understand your own perspective, and then you have honest conversations with other people. Like, I've always been the person who talks to strangers. And the reason why people like, I mean, just to toot my own horn, the reason why people like talking to me is because I ask them questions and listen very intently. So even if I don't agree with them, I'm just the type of person, like, even if I don't agree with you, I need to know how you tick, right?
Who would have thought listening was a powerful thing?
I know, but it's true. Like, that's something that, and even as like, people ask me this all the time, and I just like want to highlight this because it's related. Like, as a trans person, like, people are like, oh, how are you so forgiving about people messing up your pronouns or etc. I'm like, because I wasn't for a long time. I had to go through that period of anger of like, oh fuck, like my best friend can't get my pronoun right. I hate it. And then you're like, I want to cut you off, but then you reach that next step of like, okay, if I cut everybody off, then I will have nobody.
Yeah.
So how do I balance, yes, my identity is important, but then also knowing, hey, people have to practice knowing and talking about you in this way.
Yeah.
Right? But that exercise alone in the microcosm of my own life I've tried to expand it everywhere, because I've noticed in general, post-Rona or social media landscape, our political discourse right now, there is a lack of grace for other human beings. Understandably so, because, you know, some of them are trying to take our rights away. But on the flip side, they're still human. And if we want to make any lasting change, you have to accept other people's humanity. Otherwise, nothing's gonna change. We're just gonna keep yelling at each other and killing each other. Like, it's the truth. Like,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Beautiful reflections, Tony.
But,
How do you think all this is going to come into your art when you get back from tour and figure out your next artistic endeavor?
you know, I haven't really thought that far ahead, other than
I didn't think so.
I've been writing some music. Some of it is explicitly about being trans, and some of it's not. And honestly, the only pressure I put on myself is to be a role model for myself and my community, in the sense that I want to represent non-binary people being happy. That's it. Like, and like, not like a superficial way, but just like doing what I want to do with my life. And I think that's
Yes.
what people have latched onto. And anyone, even if you're not GNC trans, even if you're not queer, even if you're like, you know, even like the people in my life who are cis and straight, you know, they also latch onto that. Like, oh, you can dress however you want or do whatever you want to do and be whoever you want to be. Like, that's a universal message that I think anyone can learn
I love
from.
this.
Like, and that's why I want everyone to embrace trans people and trans beauty. Like, it's not about like pronouns or whatever, right? It's about letting people be who they are,
Yeah.
like without apologizing and without having to like defend our existence.
Sure.
And that applies to anybody.
Love it. Beautiful. What do you think is the biggest thing you learned this year? We're like end of year 2023. It's
What's
been
my New
quite
Year's
a year.
resolution?
No, just like one of the
No.
things that you learned that you know, that stuck with you, that stands out. I like what you said, by the way, about be a role model in just being
Yeah.
and not putting anything on, putting any outfit or uniform on to project a certain message, by just being the message.
Yeah, I mean, happiness shouldn't be performative, right?
Yeah.
A little dig. I guess the lesson I've learned is, it's the one I learn every year, but especially as my life, I should say, not as I turn 28. But what I think about when I think of 28 is like my life is settling nicely into who I am. So it's like, truly define success, define yourself, define everything that's important to you in your life on your own terms. Which sounds very simple, but is very hard because
It's
you have to
pretty
balance.
difficult.
Because, you know, we live in a world where other people and other things and the powers that be in the world around us affect our decisions. But as much as possible, like, try to make the choices for yourself. Because anytime I've done a choice for me, even if it didn't seem like it would fit or like it made any sense to anyone but me, like, those are the best decisions I've ever made. And
agree.
anytime I have regrets, it's when I temper my decisions for other people or other things in my life or expectations.
Yeah.
So truly choose the path that's best for you, which,
Well, I've been talking a lot about listening to your inner voice and finding techniques to quiet the world down so that you can hear your inner voice.
yeah.
And one thing in the last 2 or 3 years that's been life-changing has been breathing and being mindful, practicing mindfulness. Those are techniques that I use.
Yeah.
Journaling, for sure. Anything else that you do that help you kind of listen to that inner voice?
I mean, what I've really had to practice in therapy and in my life is just being honest with myself, it just takes practice to do that.
How do you know when you're not honest with yourself?
It's like, you know, like when your inner voice is like, I shouldn't do that. But really dig into that. Like, why?
Yeah.
Like, what's the reason why you're telling yourself that? Like, why you shouldn't do something. For example, let me take like touring. So when I decided to go on tour, I was like, should I do this? Like, should I like
You mean
leave?
touring with another act that's not your own?
Yeah, like I was like, should I leave my producing career behind? I'm so stable in New York right now. Like I have all this like very consistent money in New York, blah, 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 blah. Even though my gut was saying, go on tour, it'll be fun, it'll be growth, that inner voice was like, so why was I so afraid of that? Like I wasn't being honest with myself. Like I want to go on tour, but these are the things that are stopping me from doing it. So when I found those out, I'm like, oh, I'm afraid of losing business. I adjust that logically. I talked with my manager about it and like, okay, we're gonna set up these things. So it's moving it out of that like emotion-based fear, right? Moving into the honesty of like, oh, this is what I'm afraid of losing for real, right? These are the tangible things, and then actioning those, right? That's how I like get out of that cycle of fear. And I'm still working on it, obviously,
Yeah,
right?
I
But
mean-
it's just like checking in with yourself. That's what I'm looking for. It's like, being honest with yourself is checking in with yourself and then actually holding yourself accountable, right, for doing that. Because it's easy to be like, go through life and like, go la-di-da. I'm just gonna do whatever. Which is where I was. I was just doing whatever in New York. And while that was good, because I built connections and did fun things, it didn't make me think deeply about my life path in the ways I needed to. And also about myself. Like, it's not always about like the destination of going for your career or whatever. It's also about like, what's really gonna make me happy? It's easy to just like keep taking things on, hoping something will make you happy. If you're just being very deliberate about, oh, I wanna have fun now. I wanna go on tour and have fun and take a break from being an artist, take a break from the city, right?
Yeah, love that. Cool. Well, what are you looking forward to next?
Seeing the country in 2024.
All right.
That will be fun during an election year. But really, I'm excited to learn about the country we live in. And I'm excited for all the new music that I'm going to be working on the road. So that'll be good.
Oh yeah. What do you guys think? You got questions for us? Post them, send them in. Spotify podcast even has a way for you to send in voice messages, which we can answer those questions or play those audio clips or whatever. The world is your oyster, friends.
Yeah.
Well, Tony, beautiful catch up. Thanks for doing this, and I'm really happy. It's such a limited, stupid word, but when I come up with a better word, I'll share.
I'm feeling grateful.
I'm really happy for you to be in your flow and for you to very viscerally trust that flow. And I see you just making moves everywhere that fulfill you personally.
Yeah.
And that's the best thing for anybody to see in another person that they care about. So, cheers
Cheers
to
to
that.
that. Coffee.
Coffeewithbao.com if you want to check out the other episodes of this show. Thank you guys. See you next time.